Hello. Welcome, everybody. I'm Lauren Rosen. I'm waiting on Kelley Frankie for this week's episode of Purely OCD. And I hope everyone's having a lovely week so far, even though we've just gotten underway. We'll be talking about self-compassion again today. So self-compassion part 2. And Kelley coming in. Where's everyone joining from?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm
That's
well.
good.
So welcome
Mhm.
back to this week's episode of Purely OCD. And we will be talking about self-compassion once again, ladies and
Part
gentlemen.
two.
There was so much to talk about with self-compassion that we had to make 2 parts.
Oh, Pismo Beach. I lived
Oh,
there for a very short period of time.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
So here we are,
self-compassion part two. Sorry,
part two,
brain,
part duo. No,
something like that.
dose. Wow.
Dose.
Dose or
Well,
duh.
do. Okay. Wow.
Wow. We're off the rails already, and
We are
we're only
off.
1 minute
Yes.
in. So,
This is why we
anyone,
do it on Monday, because then our excuse is like it's Monday. Okay, coming back.
exactly, coming back. So, if anyone has any questions, throw them in the question mark area. We do have some left over from last time that we want to get to. But I know one thing that we didn't get a chance to talk about last time that we both thought would be good to talk about is loving kindness meditation and how that can support self-compassion. Um, should we start there?
Yeah, let's do it. We have a fair amount of people here. I am just curious. You can send like a thumbs up if anybody's familiar with it or have tried it,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe sharing what your experience is like as well
Yeah,
while we're talking about it, because
I
it's
think
good to
that's
have
great.
some interactions with you guys.
Definitely.
Um, but yeah, so loving kindness. Lauren, do you want to
Sure. So,
start and
yeah,
I'll add in?
sure. And I think you have some interesting stuff to add in about the loving kindness meditation. Did we talk about that on the live last week? I can't remember now.
We
Or
may
it was,
have, but I don't think it was anything formal.
yeah. But you had talked about Thich Nhat Hanh. Was that on the
Right.
live or did?
Yeah. So how he's redefining self-compassion, like the word love, that it actually genuinely translates as hold on one second.
Mm-hmm.
It shoot.
All good. So I know I remember you saying that the term loving kindness should be, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, is actually just love, right? Or was it
Yeah.
loving kindness or was it something else?
Yeah, so it's actually it means self-love, not self-compassion, but because the word has been thrown around so loosely
Right.
that people have actually like misused it. So to say self-love feels a little bit um I guess diluted in some way.
Well, wait, saying self-compassion feels diluted, you mean, right?
Well, so I guess what he's saying is that people use the word compassion instead because the love is used so
Yes,
frivolously.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
So
Right.
he's saying, I'm going to call this self love, but
Yeah.
you know this as self compassion.
Yeah.
And then he goes into um, a lot more about that and what it means. And he starts with how you practice that. Number one is the loving kindness meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. I think, and I don't know that we got into this too much last time, but this is sort of the difference between love as a feeling versus love as a verb, which I think is a really important segue into the discussion of metta or loving kindness meditation,
mhm.
because it's not going to feel good, right? Like it's not going to, or feel compassionate or whatever it is that you associate with that you think it's supposed to feel like. It's unlikely to feel that way in my experience. That oftentimes, sometimes you get that, but sometimes it's just showing up and talking to yourself in a certain way over and over and over again. And eventually, maybe it starts to feel a little bit different.
Yeah. And it's also about sending love to other people, people that have harmed you, or people you're neutral with, or people you really love deeply.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of does a full circle. It's may I be well, may this other person be well, right? And then it comes back to loving self.
Yes. So I guess to that end, if we're talking about the practice of metta or loving kindness meditation, as Kelley's saying, we tend to use these specific phrases, and these phrases become the focal point of the meditation. So whereas in a very basic focused awareness meditation that's mindfulness based, we might be focused on the breath, notice when we wandered, come back to the breath. That within the loving kindness practice, we're using sometimes, may I be peaceful, may I be filled with joy, may I be free from pain, may I be free from suffering, right? Like these kinds of well wishes. I'm actually saying may I be because we're talking about self-compassion, but to Kelley's point, we usually start with somebody else, and it's usually easier to access with somebody else. So that
Yeah,
sense
someone
of,
you love, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
they'll have you, you close your eyes and you visualize this person and really hold them in your mind, and then you do the well wishing, right? May you be well.
Yeah.
Um, but just to recap, in case you guys are all here new and you missed last week's episode, what we're talking about is self-compassion, and it's really important in the treatment of OCD and oftentimes missed because we are so hard on ourselves and we're so fused with our thoughts, and we think, what's wrong with me, and why do I have these thoughts, or why am I not getting better fast enough, or what kind of a person has these thoughts. There's so much judgment.
Or why did you do that compulsion? You know, you're not supposed to do compulsion, right? Like the
Right,
even
just
into the treatment, it gets
right, just
scary.
the
Yeah.
berating of it that goes on, the bullying. It's like if OCD wasn't hard enough
Right.
or depression wasn't hard enough, now we're going to just slam ourselves over it.
Yeah.
It's not helpful. So that's why we're talking about self-compassion, because I had heard somebody earlier saw someone else say they didn't know what we were talking about.
Ah,
So just a quick recap.
yeah. No, that's a good summation and why
Yeah.
this is so important. So when we start with somebody who's really easy to practice with, and sometimes that's an animal. One of the instructions
Yes.
in this form of meditation that I really like is pick somebody whose love you feel, or the love you feel for them is uncomplicated, right? It's just
Yes.
sort of, there's like a,
Uncomplicated. That's it.
yeah, like an easiness of like, oh gosh, I just love that person. Um, right, which is not most of our relationships in our lives, I think, right? Like most of the time love is complicated, right? Like it's so that, but to find somebody for whom you just unabashedly feel these feelings of warmth and love, and start practicing saying these phrases. And of course, just like with regular meditation, your mind is going to wander off into something or other. And the idea is to use self-compassion in that moment to say, oh,
Yeah.
look, I caught myself.
Yeah.
Okay, well done. I'm thinking, but like in a very kind way. And then bring it back to these phrases.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
and then to your point earlier, that's where you can cultivate that and then start to channel that back toward yourself. In some traditions, you start to channel that towards somebody who's either neutral or who you feel negatively toward. Right? Like,
Right. Exactly. And that's very hard to do.
mm-hmm.
However, that being said, for somebody who I think, this is very subjective, but I've held a lot of anger in my life towards people. And actually, that's really painful process when you're sending somebody who's harmed you actively loving kindness. And it's not meant to abolish them for the deeds they've done, but
Right.
it's almost like genuinely saying, this person is very unwell, right? Like, let's use the bully who follows us constantly on Instagram. Okay.
Hmm.
So they're always typically here. It doesn't matter if Lauren and I are here together
Yeah.
or alone, they're here. Okay.
Yep.
We could sit here and get very upset about it. And we have many times. We've had
Yeah.
discussions about it. But at the end of the day, this person is in tremendous pain and
Yeah.
they're actively trying to harm us. So if we send them loving kindness and we say, may you be well, may you experience joy, it lifts up this burden that we're carrying around. And it gives us space to really feel positivity. And there's just a lightness to it. It
Yeah.
by no means is, like I said, easy, or it's going to just like, now I'm not going to feel bad, but it's
Right.
the weight of it lifts and you feel like that is actually the healthy thing to do. This is the thing that feels good.
Yes, that's the thing about, I think it's such an important point that you bring up here because we don't practice self-compassion because it's like some sort of moral high ground. We do it because it's a much better, like, or, and this is compassion rather. I keep defaulting to self-compassion because it's the sort of title today, but I think when we move into compassion out of this sort of rumination around anger, it's a more pleasant internal experience than is constantly just reliving how angry you are and how much this other person sucks. And now, to your point, doesn't absolve them of anything. Doesn't mean we don't need to set boundaries with another person, right? If we're talking about compassion, it's just what kind of an experience do we want to have in while with this other person's existence still being like the bully on Instagram, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
how much do I want to put toward that or like focus on that essentially. Not doesn't mean that the anger is not going to pop through though or the frustration, and the same thing goes for yourself too when
Yeah.
you're practicing it toward yourself.
Well, and it kind of starts to degrade your own ability to have self-compassion in a certain sense. You know, when you hold that much anger towards others,
Yeah.
it kind of becomes poison and
Yeah.
it's unhelpful. So, but either way, coming back to self-compassion, it's such an important part for people living with OCD,
Yeah.
with any in general, right? But OCD tends to have this very critical stance of self and the thoughts that are going on.
Yes. Yes, very. In fact, it's funny because we're talking about how difficult it is to practice compassion for somebody that you actively dislike. And sometimes it's hardest for people to practice compassion toward themselves more than anybody else, even their enemies, right? So it's, yeah, it can be really tough and really counterintuitive, like we were talking about last time. So
Absolutely.
I did,
And
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that segues us nicely to the question that one of our
Yes. Yep.
followers last week had asked.
One thing I want to mention real quick because I saw it come up is that Headspace, as somebody was saying, has these types of meditations, and
They do.
most of the mindfulness apps are going to have these kinds of meditations. So if that's something that you use that you find helpful, looking for, like I said, metta is what it's called, and or loving kindness meditation, or oftentimes it's now branded as self-compassion because they'll use these practices to support self-compassion. But
Oh,
it,
really quickly too.
yes,
Dr. Kristen Neff on her website, she
yes,
has like these open sources of meditation and exercises actually that can help access self-compassion. So she has worksheets that if you go through them, they kind of help you develop like this self-love and seeing these aspects of yourself and seeing it in others. And I found that really helpful. But she also has a multiple free self-compassion meditations. So,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
No,
Proceed.
that's solid. Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
sharing that resource. So, did you have one specific question that you wanted to start with?
Well, I think the one about how do I have self-compassion for part
Yes.
of my, well, you read it. I don't remember the
The
exact,
essence of it was, how do I find compassion for my brain when it hurts me so much, when it
right?
continually causes me so much pain? And it's a really good question. And do you want to start, or shall I? Either way.
It's up to you.
Okay. Um, well, as a jumping off point, I think we when we talk about OCD and anxiety disorders, we're quick to go to like they're the mean guy, right? Like
The bully.
they're the bully. They're so awful. And I think honestly it's a mischaracterization, even though I totally understand why, because I've used that characterization too before. But I think that at its core, anxiety or OCD is about a deep, deep fear of being unsafe. And so if we start to look at this part of us that's constantly calling out all of the potential pitfalls in our environment, as really just being overprotective and misguided in the way that they're trying to help us,
Right?
that's
Like, what if something bad happens to your child? What if you do something? What if you
right.
never get better? It's that, those are the what ifs, just to clarify.
Yes, no, good clarification. So if there are these what ifs coming up that you don't necessarily need to see that as this demon that's inhabiting your mind that's trying to torture you, because that's not really what it's after. What it's after is your safety, your sense of safety. Now, what it doesn't know is that this is a really poor way of getting a sense of safety, is trying to follow these different questions and perpetually figure them out. But if we look at it from that perspective, I think it's a whole lot easier to access self-compassion than it is when we look at it as like this evil within us that's, just trying to harm us.
Right? It's like this overprotective uncle, as I think Dr. Stephen Phillipson talks about, is
Yeah.
he's got the shotgun and he's on the porch protecting you. That's deeply misguided. That being said, is like this goes back to what we said originally: is when we send loving kindness to people that have actively hurt us, that it's not easy, right? It's not easy, and if you don't do that, it's actively going to continue to harm you and
Right.
get in your way. So while we can certainly hold space for OCD and the pain it's causing, we can also set boundaries, like Lauren said, and saying, we're not doing this today. This isn't happening. And I'm going to respond with loving kindness, is like, I feel pain. This is hard,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
Goes back to last week's talk.
Yep.
Acknowledge the pain, see it, make space for it, and send it kindness. Like anyone would feel this way, the common humanity piece.
Yep. Which is so important. So yeah, I think that really covers how you can support yourself with loving kindness, with self-compassion, even when you might see that your brain has wronged you in some ways. That recognizing that the much as we would with other individuals, the wrongdoing is misguided, but perhaps not always, but perhaps not ill-intentioned. I think it's a lot harder to be kind to the part of you when you think, oh, well, it's trying to get at me. And the problem is it then sets up this contentious relationship with you and yourself. which is not very pleasant either. It's not nice to live in your brain when it's this constant fight for, you know, who's right or,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I think that when I talk about this with clients, sometimes the thing that comes up is that they're hurting like this. How can you say that? Like I'm in so much pain, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not, and I'm by no means am I saying that. And trust me when I say that I often get stuck in that. I'm like, I hate OCD. Oh, I hate anxiety. I hate all of this.
Yeah.
And at the same time, when we do that, we're getting more and more stuck and we're putting it almost on this negative pedestal. Like it has so much power over us now.
Yeah.
And we have so much more space when we go take a step back and we go, I feel pain, I'm uncomfortable, you know, the common humanity and then loving kindness.
Totally. Totally. And that's the thing is that when we're in that much pain, that's exactly what we need,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Like that's what if we saw somebody weeping on the street, you know, and we happen to be walking by it, we'd ask like, "Are you okay? Is there anything that you need?" Not, "God, you idiot, why are you sitting on the street crying? That's dumb."
Yeah.
Right? Don't do that. Like, can you
Yeah.
imagine? Yeah, no.
Or talking to my child that way, right? Is,
No.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'm like, ah, but if she came to me with a scary thought, which she has, the very first thing I do is I acknowledge her pain. I would never say to her, what is wrong with you? Like how we talk to ourselves. Duh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
What? And
What
then when we
now?
do it, yeah, and then when we turn it on to ourselves, it's like, oh, well, but I don't talk to myself that way.
Yeah.
Well, you better start,
Yeah.
guys.
It's helpful to say the least.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing, so one of the other questions that we got asked was about guilt and navigating guilt. And I think that we were both talking about how self-compassion is uniquely supportive of feel all sorts of feelings, but including guilt.
Mhm.
So do you want to, since I took the last one to start, do you want to start this one off on like how do we?
Right. So guilt is a very strong, like, I guess, distressing emotion. I don't want to say negative because then we're judging it, right?
Yeah.
But it's a very distressing emotion. And just like anxiety, it doesn't mean that it's true, right? Like, it doesn't mean because we feel a certain thing that something bad's going to happen with anxiety or for guilt. It's that I've done something wrong. Um, so it's the same protocol, right? It's the same. We're going to have loving kindness for it and leave space for it and not judge it and not fall into it and go, oh my gosh, this must mean I did something wrong. It's
Right.
the same exact protocol.
Absolutely. So like, if we took an example, like with guilt tends to come up a lot in real event OCD, for instance. Yeah.
Yep.
So if somebody's having a thought like, oh my gosh, I can never forgive myself for that thing I did. Whatever the thing is, doesn't matter. But this comes up a lot for people with OCD is there's like one thing in the back of their minds from years and years ago. Or maybe not, but oftentimes. And when that happens, if you were that person's brain, you would first practice mindfulness. So to acknowledge, oh, I'm having thoughts
Mhm.
that I'm somehow inherently flawed or bad, sort of verging on the shame category.
Yeah.
And the second piece would be, you know, a lot of people I bet who struggle with OCD like I do have feelings of.
Oh, I lost your sound. There you are. Yeah. Yep.
So, common humanity, right? Like recognizing that there are a lot of other people who are probably navigating this, who, you know, who have OCD, maybe who don't, right? Like guilt comes up for things in the past that we might have done otherwise if we had it to do over. And then the self kindness, right? Okay. Yeah. It's really challenging to be with guilt. And I got you, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna hold your hand, and we're gonna walk through the guilt. It's okay. It's okay to feel this. Um, and you know how to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I do see that we have another question from before, but we have some. Should I grab the other question?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Let me see what we
we only have
have.
like a few minutes, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Yeah. So
maybe
maybe,
we do one depending on.
yeah, I think that these are more general questions. Um, oh, well, actually,
Yeah,
so
we've got this. I like that. That's definitely a way to approach it too.
I
Someone
love
commented.
that. Yeah, we've got this. You, yourself, and you, but also the community that you have that you build. So this is the question that I pulled up. How can you help your partner with self-compassion without feeding into reassurance seeking? And I
Great
think it's a
question.
really good question. So, and we kind of talked about this last time. So I would definitely encourage you to go back and listen to the last episode in terms of how an individual can practice self compassion without reassuring themselves. And ultimately, it's really important that we're not trying to resolve any sort of uncertainty with the self compassion. That it's more, I'll be with you in the uncertainty rather than let's figure this out, because once we get into figuring it out territory, it starts to get messy.
Right. So, how we do that with the reassurance for partner is just acknowledging their pain, right? Is I see you're in a lot of pain, whatever that is, and I know you're struggling. I also know I believe in you. I know you can handle this. If I were going through this, I would feel the same,
Yeah,
right? And I'm here for you.
yeah. Or
It's
yeah, and even if you can't, because I think sometimes a partner won't be able to personally understand what the person is going through, but
yeah,
to say, to say like it's really understandable that you're having this experience, even if you can't directly relate to what it might be like.
right. But we know what pain feels like.
That's for sure. Most of us know what pain feels like, and it's difficult to feel pain. One of the things, too, with compassion, so, if we're looking at self compassion, we've got the self kindness component. I also think that this is where you can offer, can we do something together that would support you in making the choice not to compulse? Can we, do you want to go for a walk? Do you like something that you enjoy doing
Can
with
I
your
offer
partner?
you a reframe? I'm
Can I
just
offer
kidding.
you a reframe? Yeah, no, but in earnest, that just can I let's play some cards together, right? Like I know that you really want to figure this thing out, but like, wouldn't it be more fun to just play a game of Uno or something?
No, it's true. Except here's the thing. I will say this.
Hmm.
When a partner says that sometimes and you're not in a good place, it can feel really, it could piss you off.
Yeah,
You can be
yeah.
like, how dare you offer Uno when I am
I-
really in a lot of pain and I really want that damn reassurance, Like,
Yes, no, I know. And I think for the partner in that situation, it's okay to set a boundary. It's okay to say, okay, well, I can see
yeah,
that you're really in it right now. And that, if you want support, I'm here, but you also don't get to like be unkind to me because you're frustrated that I'm not going to do the thing that we both know is going to be harmful to you.
right. And also, maybe you don't lash out, but to acknowledge that, like, sometimes it can feel like you get a little prickly around that when someone,
Yeah.
that's been my experience, anyways, is like,
Ah,
no, no, no. But I might not have actually said it, but, move with it. And then you can also have these conversations ahead of time, too. And you can say, when I'm struggling, these are the things that I kind of need and I forget in those moments, or things that you can offer me that um, aren't reassurance giving, but kind of supportive to me in my
yeah.
recovery. So,
Totally. I think it's really, really important to have those conversations in advance for sure, because in the moment, the person with OCD is not going to have a very easy time walking somebody else through how to support them.
yeah,
And yeah,
great
so
question.
very good question. So
So,
we're off.
we're out of time, folks.
Yep. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be
Thank you.
back next week with another episode. Let us know if you have anything in particular that you'd like for us to explore further, and we'd be happy to do so.
Yes.
All right.
Goodbye, friend.
Goodbye, friend.
Bye.